curveball, and we have no idea why. Right now, we have 979 locations listening to this call, which is pretty dramatic. Our maximum is 1,001, and many of you are in places where there are multiple people, so I appreciate everybody's time and effort. This is an interesting subject to address. As all of you know, we are in a situation with the business where we all have our ups and downs. We have our moods. And I was thinking about this morning, actually laying in bed early this morning when I woke up, and I was thinking about how some people in the business, in leadership, kind of are good when they're in the mood and not very good when they're not in the mood. And I understand that stuff. You know, I got my moods too. And, you know, I've talked at different times to many of you about the real private side of my nature. And I share that aspect of who I am, not because it's of any particular interest. It's just that I want all of you to understand, especially those of you that are newer, that you don't have to be some certain kind of personality. They talk about A's and B's and all this stuff. You know, we're all human beings with this tremendous capacity for self-improvement and for developing skills. And in the development of skill and ability, I just want you to know you don't need to be amazing in every area. You know, I use a golf analogy. We just had a championship weekend for the PGA Championship, and you look at the guys who win a tournament in any given week in golf, they're usually up near the top in putting, but they're usually not in driving accuracy. Maybe they were good in up and downs, but not in stand saves. And even the best in the world, when they're playing better than anybody else in the world and they win, they aren't great at everything. You know, it's such an important principle to remember that as you look at this, I mean, sometimes you get this picture in your mind of some super person at connecting with people, some amazing prospecting, bold, courageous, confident, and this isn't how we come into it. And even when you see that person, maybe they're just feeling good that day. So the point I want to make here is we've got to build some habits that see us through our moods, habits that see us through the ups and downs of the business and our frustration. And they're habits in how we think and habits in how we, and then some of the technical stuff that we do. It's interesting, working with my son-in-law, Trevor, who's my right hand and also very busy and successful in the business. And he's been with me so much as I talk to people and prospect and been associated with that. He was actually giving me feedback on how I prospect, which is an interesting loop. He says, I don't even think, you know, that you know you do these things that consciously anymore. And that's what got me thinking about the habit pattern that I've established that sees me through all my different things. There are lots of days I don't want to talk to people. And I pick a crazy business for feeling that way with any regularity, but there it is. There are lots of days I don't, but I do anyway, and I do fairly successfully because of the habit pattern. And I'll look sometimes at a full day of appointments and conversations with people. I go, oh, man, you know, I'd love to go play golf today, or I'd love to whatever. I'd love to just not do it, you know, but I do it. And, of course, when you're interacting with people, it's always its own reward. I mean, almost universally, it's a real positive feedback loop. And so that sustains you. Giving to people sustains. But it's also sometimes challenging and a little fatiguing. And so the habit pattern is what has carried me. My habits now have me be an effective prospector every day, you know, when I'm out among people. Same with inviting, same with recruiting. You know, that I'm not having to do a lot of conscious thought. I don't, when it comes to a recruiting presentation, I'm not having to think through that much what I want to say. That stuff is basically committed to memory. And we're going to talk about all of this in a methodical way. But I want you to be excited about the chance to just be better in these areas. And like I said, we could talk for 5 hours about this. If we were all together in one place, and I wish we could be very interactive, but I think there's around you a great deal of knowledge about some of these things. For most of you, that's true. And you need to take some of the thoughts or questions that occur to you as we go through this webinar and take it to your local leadership and reach up if necessary and get some clarity on some of your questions that remain outstanding or unanswered by the time we're done. So I just want to make sure we don't, there's no way to make this all-inclusive, in the time that we have allotted to ourselves today. So let's go to slide 1. And remember, it's just how to be better at this stuff. Let's talk about building your natural market. And I love that little saying, life is about the people you meet. I mean, that's certainly true when I walked into a room full of beautiful young women in college and my eyes met the beautiful brown eyes of a short, freckled girl named Cindy Maley, who is my wife now. And I met her, not even then. We just had eye contact then. And that's still, I guess, technically meeting, because it sure made an impression on me and on her, I found out later. And then we met on campus, ended up talking, and, of course, here we are today with this wonderful life. And so building your natural market is an ongoing process. Point 1 is that you need a dynamic, growing prospect list. I've emphasized before in previous webinars that just doing a list once, it's a mistake when you think, well, step 1 is doing a prospect list. Well, we all do need to do a prospect list, but step 1 is step 1 every day. And so we need, we need to have it be a continuous flow in and out. And what I mean by that is you have names coming in, you're adding to it. I added 4 names to my prospect list on Saturday. And that's interesting, right? Because we've got this gigantic company we had the privilege to override and work with and got all kinds of things going on, and yet I'm adding to my prospect list. Well, part of that is just habit. I refer out almost everything that I do at this stage of the game, with a few exceptions. And I'm still recruiting. When I'm done with this webinar, I'm doing a recruiting call with a guy in the business. Anyway, we used to be together years ago, and we're going to make some things happen. But it's, all of that stuff is going on for me too. So I feel qualified, and I'm not just walking down memory lane as I talk about these things. This is the stuff that we have done at Cindy and I for decades. And around us has grown up this wonderful, positive experience in the business. So a prospect list needs to be dynamic and growing. There's a continuous flow of people you're meeting that you're adding to it, and people that are coming out either as recruits or clients, or they say no. But all of those situations, you're looking to add referrals. And, of course, if a person joins, that's a whole prospect list. That's your referrals, too. You're helping them work it. And it all comes back, in a sense, to your prospect list. I've mentioned before on this call that last year, in terms of our career, and these are the ones we know about, but it's a minimum, we went over 1 million recruits over the last 33 years. We've now begun our 34th. But anyhow, over 1 million recruits that have come directly, indirectly through our prospect list. So you got to know I have kind of some conviction about a prospect list, about adding to it, about have it be a continuous process, and have it become a positive way of life. And that's the thing I want it to be. Make it a way of life. Make being friendly to people and talking to them a way of life. I want you to learn through practice, which is really the effective way to learn. We can talk about it here. We can talk about it in classrooms. You can drill. But the reality is you're going to be out amongst people, whether you're going to the dry cleaners or going to a restaurant or, whatever you're doing, sitting next to somebody at a sporting event. There's just all these opportunities for conversation. You had some work done in your car. You're waiting there do the paperwork, and there's someone else sitting there, you greet them, you talk to them. We'll talk about that in a second. But I want you to make practice fun in your mind. Being friendly and having friendly interactions with people is fun. And that's what it's turned into for me. That's, of course, what has made it much easier to do. And so let me start organizing this in your mind in a way that I think will help relieve some pressure. And I think a number of you that are listening right now need to understand better, how this is done, really. I think there's some real confusion consistently in this business and in our business and in our company about how this works. So let's talk about the big three. Next slide. We mentioned there are three things on the title page, so here they are. One, prospecting, which is basically making a positive impression. Okay? Two, inviting. This is where you intrigue somebody a little bit and arrange to meet. And this is pretty simple stuff. And three is recruiting and presenting the opportunity, which is a little bit more involved. And you want to watch that being done. You want to have some help being done when you're new. But it's something you want to get organized in your mind and learn to do, and what you basically want to cover in talking about the opportunity, because you want to very quickly move past worrying about what you're saying, and so you can put all your energy into how you say it. That's a very important thing to understand, moving from what you say to how you say it. Once you get the stuff organized in your mind, these points. We're going to talk about market need, and we're going to talk about the quality of what's available today to the consumer. We're going to talk about how distribution is broken down in the industry, and we're the answer for it. I mean, it's all that kind of exciting stuff. And so as we look at that, are we okay, Trevor?
I guess so. I'm getting a lot of questions about people can't see the slides, even though it says it's showing it and stuff.
Okay, we're getting some questions that people can't see the slides, and we're not doing anything different on our end that we're ever doing. So we're trying to fix this as we go. If not, then you're going to take good notes. I think we're squared away now. But so there are the big three: prospecting, inviting, recruiting. Again, you know how I say 1, 2, 3? I mean, I want this to be very literal in mind. These are three separate events. I'm going to emphasize that again here in a minute. Three separate events. Where gigantic screw-up comes from in this business is that you think you do all three at once. I was watching someone who's actually pretty successful in the business. We were out to lunch. We were back in the East Coast, and Cindy and I were eating with him and his wife, and there's this server waiting on a table, nice guy, and I engaged him in a prospecting conversation. We were making a positive impression. I had no plans on recruiting this guy. I wasn't exactly in the right market, and he was 3,000 miles from where I live. But but it's a habit. It's a habit that I prospect and get to know people. So I got to know that this guy, how long he's worked there, that he's a musician, what his music is. He's been on had done some fairly cool stuff with some prominent entertainers, and been on a couple of music videos, and he taught at a local school, because we'd ask him about this big private school we'd driven past in this town. It was very impressive. They'd been there over 140 years, and anyway, and so he was talking about the way he used to teach music there, and so we just having all this conversation. You can see I remember all this stuff, and this was months ago. But this is what happens when you just get to know people, but I could see my friend almost quivering in the booth across from me in a desire to invite and recruit right on the spot, and overwhelmed. Now, sometimes you get one shot at it. You're never going to see the person again, and maybe you do that. But I'm going to talk about how you do, in natural ways, get to see him again. And if he worked consistently at that restaurant and you lived in that area, You simply come back to the restaurant, see them a couple more times, and then you move to an inviting standpoint, a getting together to talk type thing. And so understand, if you're sitting there when you're out meeting people, in other words, as a stranger that you're meeting and you're just chatting them up a little bit, if you're sitting there thinking, how am I going to invite them and how am I going to recruit them right here, no wonder you're messed up, right? I mean, if you're trying to do all that at once, there's nobody on the planet that's any good at that. Gosh, you guys, 34 years of experience I've got, all this, and practice, and I'm no good at taking a stranger from not knowing who the heck I am and not having any kind of impression to somehow I'm giving them a whole spiel. When you think of people like that, right, you understand, right, what I'm talking about. And so we're going to talk a little more about that when you get to the prospecting section. But these are three separate things, and it's kind of amazing that any of us ever thought they were supposed to be all done at once, because that would blow up my mind. Yet I remember when I thought I had to do them all three at the same time. I want to give some props out to Ed Milet. I heard him talk on this not too long ago, and it was really clear in his thinking, some of the best stuff I'd ever heard on it. And I've drawn from that to help in this. Ed's a guy obviously I'm talking to all the time, and I love the way he teaches. And anyway, we are a tag team in a lot of this stuff. So, but I know that we need to get better as a company. You need to get better as individuals in these things. And the first major step is understand the three separate things. You're not supposed to meet a person and do all three of them at the same time. That almost never happens. If you talk to 100 people, what would you get? One or two that might respond to that? Most of them would head for the hills. If you've ever been approached by some kind of crazy multi-level person, and please don't be offended if you used to be a crazy multi-level person. But anyway, it's, what they just, and it's not really that, it's just whatever they want to talk about, they just blurt it out. They can't stop. There's no mental or emotional governor on these people, and I always pictured it like throwing up on somebody. Nobody wants somebody to throw up on them, and that's kind of what that's like. When you're trying to do all of this all at once in 3 minutes in a grocery store line, or in a parking lot somewhere, it's kind of like assaulting people, and so let's try and figure out how we can be more effective. And when you get this, it's pretty powerful in your life, and it's a lot easier than you think. Now, why do I have a picture of a guy in a parachute? Trevor reminded me of this. I often say, look, with what I know now and my skill set in this area, just the things that I've learned, you could put a parachute on me, push me out of a plane, drop me in some town somewhere, and I would start to get to know people, and within a matter of days, I would have 100+ people that I was working with and getting to know, that I would be turning into a quality warm market. I would be meeting people every day. I'd be re-meeting them. I'd be seeing them at their places of business. I'd be seeing them in the neighborhood. I'd be seeing them at church. You understand what I'm saying? I'd be seeing them and then connecting socially with people, and I wouldn't yet be inviting most of them at this point. Every once in a while you make a connection, somebody jumps in the boat, they go, man, what do you do? And then before you can even answer, they go, man, I need to find something better to do than what I'm doing now. I need to find opportunity, and when that happens to me, I go, oh, stop. I look around for the camera. And it happens once in a while, but not very often. All right, so there would be some of that, but most of it would be turning strangers into acquaintances, into friends, and it would be bosom buddies, like the guy you went through high school with and has been your friend for 50 years, but it's some of you aren't 50, but you know what I mean. And so it's that very simple acquaintanceship process that you overthink, and don't overthink it. Once you understand the stuff, we can drop you anywhere, and you just start making friends and meeting people in the course of going through your life, and just walking around. And there you are. Now, I do want you to go into this with the right mentality. And here's kind of my pump-up questions. And I want you to think about this. I think a lot of you use the same ones. You know, when I'm thinking about whether I want to talk to a person or not, I remind myself of this. 1, do people need our help? Do people need our help? 2, do people need our opportunity? 3, do you want to make a difference with your life? And 4, do you want a better life for yourself and your family? And so I say those things. Do people need our help? The answer to that's yes. Heck yeah. It's huge out there. It's tragic how much people need our help. And we help. And do people need opportunity and better opportunity and more control? Do they need to move from employees to entrepreneurs? Yeah, a lot of them do. And we've got a wonderful business platform. And we're doing extraordinary things for people. And it's powerful economically in our clients' lives, in our lives. You know, and you don't have to feel bad about any aspect of what we do because it's the right thing. And we're protecting families. We're going to help them accumulate. And we're giving them a better and stronger future. Wow. Right? And I feel great about it because I'm going to make a difference. Overwhelmingly, everybody I talk to needs understanding. They need education about what their choices are. They don't know. Nobody's telling them. And I know and I want to tell them. And in this process, I'm going to build a business and do something that I love doing, and it's going to give our family a better life. All right. Now I feel like talking to people a little bit. That's kind of my pump-up stuff. All right? It's the right mentality. You know, and of course my conviction about number 4, because of the quality of life this business is built for us, it's kind of overwhelming sometimes. You know, I don't even know if I know how to cherish it enough. It's been so good. And so I want you to build a new friends habit. And I want you to get good at this stuff. Right? Just get good at being friendly. And, you know, say, well, I'm not that social. Shut up. I mean, me neither. Right? Snap out of it. I like that stuff that you can't change. You know, just start being a little bit nicer. Now, if you're standing somewhere and you want to talk to a guy, I mean, you just don't know how to do it and you don't do it, don't beat yourself up for the next week about it. Just talk to the next person you see. What, do you think we're going to run out of people? You know, I mean, holy man, I guess if you live up in the Arctic Circle, right, and there aren't a lot of igloos around, you know, you might feel a little more pressure here. But on the other hand, you get a lot of indoor time with people, and it's not like they're going to walk around on you much or go outside. Anyhow, but the reality is we got lots of people around us. Just start being friendly. Hey, maybe you'll bump into them again. Whatever. There are lots of folks around. Build a new friends habit. I'm going to keep making new friends. You know, like I said, I made new friends this weekend. One of them was named David. Another one was named Gregory. You know, this is kind of fun. Another one was named Mary. You know, another one named Matt. And then there was Greg's wife. They're both attorneys. And so it's just, there it is. It's all there for us. Okay. Now, let's look and delve into this now with a little more detail. Prospecting. I'm getting a little feedback on this call. So hang in there with me. I hope I'm just hearing it. But here we go. First thing about prospecting. Don't worry about the outcome. Don't sit there agonizing over this stuff. You know, you're just meeting people. You're just being friendly. You see if you can't make a connection with somebody. Sometimes, you know, hey, you meet somebody, you talk to them, it can be at a social event, and you're like, nothing. Then they walk away completely indifferent, and you go, wow, okay. And then you go talk to somebody else. For guys who, anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. You know, the guy-girl thing. When we understand we're just meeting people, we're prospecting. In other words, I live in a state that was exploded its population because of prospecting. And they were prospecting for gold. That's where the word, the name 49ers came from, because it was in 1849. You had all these people that came from the east to the west to California to make their fortune. And so it's interesting that we can talk about prospecting. But as you went from stream to stream, and you went from hill to hill and mountain to mountain, and you were looking for gold, most places did not have it. And here, by the way, friendly people that you can make a connection with, there are more of them than there is gold. So this is, don't worry about the outcome. And then I want, next thing, just talk to people. And here's a tip: be sincerely interested in them, in what we're saying, and what you're interacting. As I've got to know Greg and his wife, they had 2 daughters with them. They're a little bit older than our granddaughters, and we had talked about that, and then we talked about motherhood with her, because she teaches in law school. His wife does. And we were down in Pebble Beach, and they were visiting Pebble Beach from out of state, and we just had this wonderful conversation. We ended up talking with them about 30 minutes or so. And we talked, and by the way, I direct most of the conversation to them. Lots of people in there prospecting that you're not even listening to them. You just can't wait to tell them something about you, or you want to talk about the opportunity. Man, you're blowing it. You're interested in them. We know where their girls go to school. They go to a private school, and what they spend on it. We talked about a local private school there called Stevenson and at Pebble Beach, and it was similar in cost. So these guys make some money, right? And because these are very expensive schools, and to have your little children in the school that's costing you $25,000, $30,000 a year in elementary school, man. Anyway, you got to be having some business success, and so I perk up from the client investment standpoint, and all these kinds of things, and so we're just getting to know them and how they met, and we know where they went to school. She was born in Palo Alto, California, but she her parents moved, and she went to school in college, and anyway, and went to Emory, and then went to University of Georgia Law School. See how much I know about these people, and where he went to school, and and how they met at work, and what he does. Anyway, I'm sorry I'm going too much about that, but just because we really are interested in people, even if we're never going to talk to them again, even if we're never going to lay eyes on them again, I want to have a good 3 minutes or a good 5 minutes being friendly and getting to know somebody for a couple of minutes. Every once in a while, I'll be asking questions to somebody, and they're like going, you can tell. They're like, what do you want to know? Now, one thing I'm careful with as a man is talking to a single woman, a woman by herself, and just trying to talk too much about it. When I find it very easy to prospect and talk to women when Cindy's with me, and I introduce her as my wife, and they don't have to worry what my agenda is. I know it's a weird world out there. And so be sensible about those kinds of things. It's interesting. I was in the airport, and on one of our last travels, and I'm trying to remember where it was. Was it Salt Lake? Was I down in Southern California? I don't remember. And I'm standing next to a gal at Jamba Juice, so we ended up talking. She's a sharp professional person. And it ended up, and then Cindy walked up, I introduced to her, and ended up we both had used to live, she lived in the same town where I live now, what she does for a living. It was Vegas, is what it was, I remember. Shoot, why should I forget that? It was coming in. And anyway, we ended up talking about all this stuff, and we had all these things that we'd been in the same places, lived around the same areas, and our families had, and what she did for a living, and it was fascinating. And I wasn't trying to recruit her. I just was talking to her. I was sincerely interested. And we ended up having an interesting conversation that she'll remember 5 years from now. But I didn't move my business ahead. Not at that one. It just didn't lend itself to that. We weren't going to be in Long Beach. She had to get to her plane. We did too. And I guess it was coming to Vegas, now that I think about it. And so from here. So I'm just saying, you build the habit, there will be lots of opportunities to add names to your list. But not everybody you talk to will you add to your list. Build the habit. So let me give you a couple of tips. One, ask questions.
Thank you.
And ask questions that are situation appropriate. You know, and in other words, what do I mean? You're staying in an tire store. You're both having tires put on your car. And you say, you know, what kind of car do you drive? You know, isn't it amazing how expensive 4 tires are nowadays? You know, and what kind of mileage do you get on yours? You know, I mean, whatever it is, you know, you can be asking questions like that. And, hey, my name's Rich. What's yours, Bob? Good to meet you, Bob. You live around here? You live from this area? And it just lends then to family and what do you do? And it's just, and it's not too fast-paced. You know, I'm not all over them. It's just a friendly conversation. If they ask what I do, I say, well, I've been, you know, in the insurance and investment business for a lot of years. It's been a great blessing in our lives. And then I'm back to asking questions about them. Well, how old are your children? You know, where do they go to school? Are they involved in any sports? I love talking about that stuff with people. And I'm back to talking about them because this isn't an invitation and this isn't a presentation. This is prospecting. Next thing, be a good listener, right? Stay relaxed. You know, don't amp up too much. And this is where practice comes in. Now, you've had this friendly conversation. So I'm sitting with Greg and his wife, and it's just, and Trevor's the one that reminded me how to do this. I don't go, could you give me a card? Could I have one of your cards? Just something about that just doesn't work. Doesn't feel right. And so here's the basic question. Some of the questions I ask when I just want to be able to contact them again. So I say, hey, do you have a card? I said, Greg, do you have a card? He says, yeah. And he pulls it out and gives it to me. I said, that's great. Is everything on here? You sell on here? If I call you, he says, yeah, I'd love to talk to you. I said, how often do you get back out here from the east? He says, well, a couple of times a year, and he likes to play golf. He played Pebble Beach that day, and that's how I led into the conversation. I go, did you play Pebble today? Did you play golf today? He said, yeah, I played Pebble. Well, how'd you do? Did it spank you a little bit? Yeah. And we were into it. It was situation appropriate. We're sitting at Pebble Beach Lodge, and I overheard him talk about a triple bogey to his wife. And so then it was easy to talk to him about that. I talked about the other course, Spyglass, what other courses on the peninsula are great to play, what my favorite course is, and how I'd be glad to take him out there sometime if he came back, and off we were. And it led from that to marriage and family and career, and we were friends. You know, I would be friends, good acquaintances almost. Right? If I were to pick up the phone and call him right now, he'd take the call. He'd go, Rich, how you doing? I said, good. I just wanted, you know, and I'm going to do that this week. and okay, so, and I also say, hey, and the other thing I did is I took out my phone. I said, this is great, but I tell you what, put yourself in my phone, you know. And so I just handed him a blank, and he typed it on my iPhone, his name, his wife's name, his kids, you know, and put his phone, his cell, and his work phone, and his email, and this is the one that I use. And you know, I said, give me the one you use the most. This is the only one I use. And so he put that down. And I said, put D.C., you know, because I'll remember him as a couple from Washington, D.C., and he's 5th generation D.C. How do I know all this stuff? Because I ask questions, and I'm friendly. I'm a good listener, and I stay relaxed, and you know, you understand? And Cindy was engaging her. That's how we found out about the schools. It's so much fun, right? But here's my best advice. Don't try too hard. Now, I'm going to make a point about trying too hard. And I'm going to give you an analogy I heard Ed share, and it was a good one. He used meeting somebody in a gym, right, where he's working out, which is situation appropriate for him all the time, every dang day. Too bad it isn't for me. Anyway, and so Ed's talking about, you know, like a single guy in a gym working out, and he sees this attractive, woman about his age, and and they've had eye contact and nodded a couple of times, but haven't spoken yet, and he wants to try. He's prospecting, right? So he wants to prospect, for a date, and so he kind of walks over casually and says, "Hey, I've seen you here a few times, and and I just want to introduce myself, and not trying to be a pest or anything." And and sticks out a hand and says, "Hi, my name's such and such," and she says, "My name's such and such," and you talk a little bit. "I see you here pretty often. How often do you try and work out a week?" Now these are situation appropriate questions. What are you trying to do? What kind of particular program? And you might, and so you're going like that. And, are you from this area? And let's say it's a friendly conversation going well. But let's say she's not interested at all. She goes, "You from this area?" "Yeah." And you get very clearly that they're not really that interested in talking to you. Let it go. Don't try too hard. And here's the analogy, and I know the fun part of the analogy. So let's take a guy who just doesn't get it. And all the ladies listening on this call, you can probably picture several people when I say, this guy doesn't get it. You've all met people like this, right? And so this guy, man, maybe he's a little too pumped up, right? Or just a little bit too interested. And, "Hey, how you doing? My name's so-and-so. What's yours? Where you from?" All this kind of stuff. And you go, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you sometime. And could I have your number?" Now, if she doesn't think you're attractive or interesting, you're not cute to her, she's not going to give you your number. She's going to say, "No, it's okay, but it's been nice talking to you." The point is, from that moment on, where there's real reluctance, nothing else that guy can say is going to get him to look any cuter to her. Every word out of his mouth from that moment forward makes him a pain in the butt. Really? I think we could connect. I've been watching you. Now it's creepy, right? I've been watching. I just think, I just think we probably have a lot in common. And, both love working out, blah, blah, blah. Now it is creepy. Now she's thinking, "Get away from me, you dork." That's the nicest thing she would say. "You creep, and it's the same way with prospecting. I just cringe when I've seen prospecting like this. I was out with a friend at lunch, and there's this gal reading a book next to her, obviously a married woman. It was, and I knew there was some kind of conference going on at this hotel, and she's obviously probably there with her husband in the conference. Sure enough, he engaged her in conversation, and it was a medical conference. Her husband's a doctor. They were there from the Midwest. And I was watching my buddy, and it's like watching the temperature rise. It's like watching the red go up on a thermometer like in a cartoon. And all of a sudden he just said, "Oh, really, I have this great opportunity," and he just blew her up. She literally fled from the room. And I talked to this guy after. I said, "Rob, it's no one that's in the business with us now." And I said, "What were you thinking there?" He went prospecting, invitation, presentation with an absolute stranger, and he wasn't going to go to Illinois and work with this person anyway. Just no clue, right? Don't try too hard. Don't chase the gal around the gym. She's not interested. Now, here's another tip, right? Let's say she did think you were cute, did give you the number. There's kind of an unwritten rule or law that you don't call right away. So imagine this. She's just walked out to her car. Her phone rings. "Hello? Hey, it's me, and I just wanted to tell you I really love meeting you, and man, I think you're beautiful, and oh man, you're just ruining it. It's too much too soon. The unwritten rule is you wait a couple of days. I met Greg on Saturday. I can call him now and say hi, and it's cool. I'm not chasing him. There's no agenda, and it's simple stuff. And so will you use common sense on this? And if you don't have any, will you borrow mine? Or someone else's that you know? And use this kind of common sense stuff. Go in, don't worry about the outcome. Just talk to people. Be interested. Ask questions that are appropriate, and then about their family and their life, and be a good listener. Stay relaxed. Make it a simple question when you want to connect. Let's say if I'd ask this guy, do you have a card? He says, no. Well, shoot, I'd love to talk to you again sometime. Well, maybe we'll bump into each other, he says. Let's say he said that. Got it. Not interested in follow-up. For whatever reason, let it go. I'm not going to try any harder than that because there's 10 million people in line behind this guy to meet in my life in the course of living my life. And so don't put this kind of pressure on yourself, and understand, once you reach that point, nothing you say is going to make you cuter or more interesting. It's just going to make you more creepy and more of a pain in the rear. All right. Good. Next one. Inviting. That little simple button up there, I love what I do, or I heart what I do, I love what I do. And I think that's a critical part of connecting with people, and of wanting to connect with people. And so now we talk about, now we've had prospecting. I have David, who works for Sotheby's Real Estate, and I have Matt, who's an assistant pro at Pebble Beach, at the golf courses there, Spyglass at Spanish Bay and Pebble Beach itself, and Mary Bell, who's with Coldwell Banker, because we were looking at some homes down there, and so anyway, and Greg, and anyway, so we have this. Now it's time for what I call friendly follow-up contact. I'll get a call out. Matt was, by the way, I know Matt was going on vacation. In fact, that's how I inserted myself into the conversation. He was saying goodbye to one of the other pros there, and I said, you going on vacation? He said, yeah. I said, where are you going? Oh, I'm back home, back to North Carolina. I could get the side. I thought I heard south in your mouth. You're from there? Yeah. Did you go to school back there? Yeah, that's great. Do you have family? Yeah, I met my wife back there. She lives out here. And it's just, anyway, where are you from? I said, we're fairly local. We're out looking at homes. He said, hey, there's a couple of homes, and we start laughing about how expensive homes are down there. But if we bought this one with a guest house, he and his wife would be glad to stay there. So we just got laughing. It was real friendly. And they have one child. And I'm going to make a connection with this guy because I liked him. And I was also asking questions about the new practice facility they're building there. Situation-appropriate questions. Very simple conversation. Look, if you say, I'm not very good at it yet, well, I wasn't either. Practice. It becomes second nature to me now. I just follow the flow of where the conversation will go. He's a pro at Pebble Beach. I'm a golfer. How tough is that? So, it's just, you just continue the conversation. Now, get your thoughts organized on this when you're about to come. So now I'm about to call Matt or Greg or David or Mary. I'm about to make a call to one of those people that currently have been added to my work group in my prospect list. And so let's say I'm picking up and I call David. Well, we talked to David for a half hour. Actually, he talked to us. Once you got the guy started, it was awesome. And he'd been in the restaurant business, has been in that area forever, and we talked about raising children and all this stuff. I'm a little worried about him because he's been married 3 times. But anyway, just as we were talking about this, and we were talking about all this kind of stuff, and and then we got talking about real estate and the home he showed, and I'd call him up and say, David, I want I said, this is Rich THAWLEY. You remember you and my wife and I, Cindy, talked for a little while about our families, about life, about raising kids, about working with your employees, and because he used to meet with his employees and talk about saving money. Unusual guy that way. And he did instantly remember us. And I said, I just want you to know we really enjoyed the conversation. And next time we're down there, which will be next week, we'd love to connect with you again. Even if it's just socially, and continue talking and all that stuff, and love to meet your wife, and and anyhow, we enjoyed it, and would enjoy just getting to know you guys a little bit better, from a friendship standpoint, especially since you live down there, and we're thinking of getting a home there. We'd kind of like to get to know some people in the area. And he'd go, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And this is very natural. My thoughts are organized about what I want to say, a little bit about how I want to say it without any big deal. And now look, if you're nervous when you're doing this and it's a little stiff and you're a little awkward, don't worry about that. You're practicing. You don't have to get this guy. I don't have to get this guy in my business. This is just a part of what I do, you know, in terms of prospecting and inviting. But now I'm getting my thoughts organized. So now I'm setting up. I'm using another call to set up getting together. And so we'll go down there and we'll make a connection. And he'll be at some house or it'll be somewhere we can meet for lunch, or we can, you know, anyway, or we can come by his office. And now we're talking again. And it's at this point, I'm going to lead the conversation around a little bit to what I do and share my passion. Now, I'll be honest with you. With this guy, because we talked long enough and we're interacting, he heard some things about what I did and the passion. And my thoughts are organized about that too. But mainly what I'm doing here, you know, is go ahead. Is I'm strengthening the relationship. What was BRT stand for again? You know, BRT stands for, I'd forgotten what BRT stands for. I put it up there. Forgot what it stood for. What a mind. Okay. Building a relationship of trust. It's actually a church term from our missionaries. You know, but you're strengthening the relationship. I'd be calling David and strengthen the relationship. I'm going to call Greg and strengthen the relationship. I'm going to call Matt, and when he gets back in a week, and strengthen the relationship. I'm talking to Mary and strengthen the relationship. And what I'm doing is I'm building a relationship of trust. This is a friendly guy. Seems like a nice guy. He's a straight shooter. Seems sharp. Seems competent. And I mean, you're creating impressions. You know, for those of you who heard me talk about brand, I'm building my brand, if you will, with them, my personal brand as a human being. You know, and as a family man, as a loving husband, as a dedicated father, as a grandfather, all of these things get mentioned in the course of conversation about our families and stuff. And then that's our brand. Grandparent brand is a pretty good one. Very non-threatening, by the way, I've noticed, in interacting with people. And I'm using the heck out of it. You know, the grandma brand. And grandpa, you know what I'm saying, grandpa brand. I did it. So you're calling back, strengthen the relationship. It's a friendly follow-up contact. Get your head together on what you're doing. Now, somebody does ask you a little bit what you do. You want to have 2 or 3 things, not much more than that you love to say about your business. You know, I've been in this industry. The one thing I can't believe about the business I'm in is how much people need this kind of coaching. They just don't know where the safest places to put their money are. They don't know where to get, you know, where that has a track record, like the return and the safety and the tax. You know, you might mention a couple of things, you know, and I love the camaraderie of our business. I mean, you know, my company, my team is a lot of teamwork and we just have a great time doing it. It's a real strong, it's a special business. And I also love kind of how profitable it's been. It's been a great blessing to our family, this prosperity. And even during the down times, we've done really well. And that's a unique aspect of our business. A lot of businesses aren't like that. When I'm talking to a real estate guy, they really get that. And so, but I have my thoughts organized, and I know what points I want to make. Now, I want to remind you again, inviting is not a presentation. Keep it simple and brief, the points you make, not a presentation. And here's the points you ought to make. What do you love most about your business? That's it. What do you love most about this business? What do you love most about yours? Because this is your business. What do you love most about what we do for people? And what do you love most about our opportunity? Have a point or two about those two things. And if it doesn't intrigue at all, then don't worry about it. It's back. You're just going to be prospecting more people. A bunch of people are going to be intrigued. A bunch of people aren't going to be intrigued. That's why you got to be prospecting. That's why you got to do the friendly follow-up contact. See if the connection continues, and it deepens a little bit, you know. But what I want you to do, and I'm going to say this next bullet point, is I want you to become an inviting maniac, you know, and really what I want you to do is become a prospecting maniac. That will allow you to become an inviting maniac. And I say 24/7, you got to have these points clear enough in your mind that I could wake you up in the middle of the night And many of you heard me tell that story, where I'd call my guys sometimes. I'd set the alarm to 3 a.m. and I'd call one of our guys, and I in the middle of the night, I remember when the first time I did this, freaked them out, but it was awesomely effective in the organization. It got to the point in about 7 or 8 months, I could literally call one of our cool, key guys in my base shop and tell them to invite me at 3 in the morning, waking them up from a deep sleep, and they could start inviting me. That's how much we focused on knowing the points we were going to make about what we do and about our opportunity. And just an invitation, someone they already had, a connection with, that they had already done some BRT with. And so I hope this is making sense to you. 3 separate things. Prospecting is one thing, and you only do prospecting when you do prospecting. Inviting is something else. That's when you're doing your contact, strengthening the relationship, and now you're talking about what it is and how you want to get with them and talk to them, about what we do. And they say, sure, or, well, I'm not interested. Either one's fine with me, because there'll be plenty to say yes, just like there'll be plenty to say no. I'd love everybody to say yes, but it's not the way it works. But I'm gonna meet 4 more people, today probably. I mean, literally. If I went in some golf balls later this afternoon, I'd go by a restaurant or whatever. I will get to know people around me because I am a friendly dude, and I've built the habit of being sociable. But if they're closed off, I let them go. It's just like fish, catch and release. Right? If you're fishing for one kind of fish that's good to eat, and you catch a carp, you're going to let the daggone carp go. Anyway, I'm not sure that's the perfect analogy, but it serves the point. So we talked about prospecting. We talked about inviting, right? And it's all easier than you think. Let the pressure off. Let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about recruiting. Now, you like that? Next exit, new life. One of the fascinating things to me about what we do and about this kind of work and talking to people, or when people are coming into BPM, I'm in a give, or I'm doing a one-on-one, or whatever it might be, or I'm in a home talking to a few people at a time, whatever the venue is, with regularity, and especially before I'm about to talk to them, I remind myself of when I sat in that room. I remind myself of when Swan Wynn came into a BPM on a Saturday morning of mine. I remember when Ed Milet came over to my house and we did a one-on-one. And I remember meeting Jeff Levitan for the first time. And I remember when Greg Kapp and I started making a friendship, and later we went into business together, and it changed both our lives. It's been a great blessing. It's sure been a blessing to me. I can speak for me. And I remember when I first met Penny Oy, and wow. And I remember when I first met John Pham and June Daly Cruz and so many other great people in the business. And I remember when I first met Eric Olson, vividly, I remember it. And I think about, someone like that walking into a BPM or a presentation I'm about to give and reminding myself of me doing that, of other people I know that came into that. And that moment was a complete new direction for our lives. It's going to give us a completely new life. I mean, Swan was a social worker. Ed Milet was in the business, but he's just bumping along in Stockton, California. And Jeff with the PNC business. And I mean, just, wow, making a living. And I think of us all now, and I think about where we're headed, how every day is an adventure. And guys, get in your head, this opportunity changes lives, and so it's presentation time, and when you're going to give a presentation, you've got to control the environment. And so, now some people say, hey, I'll meet you at a restaurant, and you got people walking around, and the waiter coming back and forth, and they're shoving food and taking it away. I don't like that kind of environment for a presentation. I like a home. I like an office. I like them invited down. I'm fine. You write with the BPM, corporate overview, whatever the heck it is you call it. But the thing is, I want them to be able to pay attention. I want to be able to hear me, keep their concentration on what we're covering, right? At this point, I'm increasing my passion and conviction. In other words, no, that's probably not perfectly accurate. My passion's already we're there inside. My conviction about what we do for people and our opportunity is the needle's pegged in the red. And so, but now I'm going to start letting it out more. You know, I'm starting increasing my RPM. Why? Because they've been prospected and they've been invited, and there's the relationship of trust, or I'm borrowing somebody's relationship of trust and been introduced and edified. And now they're going to see passion and conviction from me in a controlled environment, office, home, like I say, someplace quiet. I guess you could do it in a restaurant if you eat and you say, okay, let's take a few minutes and talk about this. You ask the person not to bother you for a few minutes, and you're off away from it, and you can get undivided attention. But you've got to control the environment. That's the main point about that, and increase the passion and conviction. If you're giving a one-on-one, and that's, you've got to have your thoughts organized on that too. Just like you did on the bullet points in an invitation, you got to know. And you've got to understand the difference when you're recruiting people between higher law and lower law. Many of you have heard me talk about this in some detail. I have talked about it in previous webinars, but there's a deal. Lower law stuff tends to not emotionally engage people. You know, I mean, how you fill out a term insurance application is lower law. For Transamerica, how you fill out a WRL, IUL, thing. How do you move money onto the platform with TFA? I mean, that's lower law stuff. How to do a follow-up interview, how to construct a prospect list. Talking about that stuff too much when you're recruiting is a mistake. It's a business, and we talk about a business platform. We talk about how effective it is, talk about how powerful the products are. When I'm talking about the products, I'm talking about how they bless lives and accumulate money and secure futures and protect families against the worst case scenarios, and what a blessing that is. And that's more of the higher law aspect of talking about products and service. But when I talk about higher law, that's when I talk about the languages, and I'm not going into that in any detail right now, but the language of helping people. When you talk about how much what we do helps people and how wonderful it is to help people and why they need the help and where we come in and how proud of it you are. That's your passion. That's your conviction. You're also part of the higher laws talking about the language of a better life and talking about, man, I appreciate the better life this has given our family and so many families here on the team. I was talking to a guy yesterday, and I was talking about a better life, and I was talking about delivering for people and making a significant difference, things that people want in their lives too. And I was trying to figure out, are we close to 3,000 six-figure earners that we've had coming to our business through the years in our career? And I mean, some phenomenally high number, and I just was reflecting on the lives that impacted and where it's gone and what's continuing to happen in so many of their lives. And wow, it's fun having a better life. Wow, it's fun taking charge and getting control and not having people breathe down your neck like I used to have at San Jose State and when I worked for the state of California and all this stuff. This is the passion and the conviction about helping people, about a better life, about the joy of building people, about them getting built. I always emphasize the part-time thing, but simultaneously I emphasize a really big picture. I want to grab people with a big picture too. Now, sure, they're thinking like me in one aspect. One side of the brain is like, hey, I just want to pay off my Visa card and get a couch, right, where I was in the beginning. But simultaneously, they gave a big picture. The guy who overviewed it, and I thought, wow, man, I don't know if I could, and I don't know anybody, my family that did. Man, it sure would be nice to have a shot at the major leagues, to really make some money. Yeah, I was newly married, and and the thought kind of increasingly got under my skin, in that meeting and then in the days that followed, right? So make sure when you're recruiting, you stay much more in the higher law. This decision to join is much more an emotional decision. It's going to take more time. It's going to take a greater commitment. The decision to buy the product, that's a little bit higher law, but mostly lower law decision, automatic draft, how much coverage, what's it cost, that kind of stuff. And you better be bringing some emotion there too. But when it comes to recruiting, I tell you what, if you're not making an emotional connection with people, then one, you're probably not recruiting many of them, and two, if you recruit them, they tend not to stick around because they never engaged emotionally. Now, I want you to remind you of something else. Recruiting is a 4 to 5 hour process. Now, what do I mean by that? You're not giving a 4 to 5 hour presentation. But think about it. In whatever scenario, they come down and you connect with them to give a company presentation. You're realistically spending hour and 15, maybe an hour and a half in that process, right? And then there's a follow-up. Let's go ahead. There's this process, right? And then there's an interview afterwards where you get with them again. And often we spend, 45 minutes, an hour in there. You don't want to spend a really long time there, but now we're into it 2.5 hours probably. And now we're going to get with them in their home. If you haven't met the spouse, you certainly got to meet them. And maybe close being a recruit. We also start them in a client process, gather data, talk to them about our concepts, and start to get them involved, in understanding what we do and how powerful it is and how good it is, right? And so, and when I became sold on the product and services, and simultaneously I was feeling good about the opportunity, I was in. And actually I came to the business from having been a client first. So I already knew the stuff was right and good, and then I looked at the business, and so he'd already spent a couple hours with us, a little bit more on the client process. Then I went in and had the hour BPM and an hour follow-up afterwards, and so there's my 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours. But you got to understand, this is the process of building conviction in them, connecting with them, right? And then, of course, you're going to start me up if I'm your new recruit. And we're going to start working on a list and start to go out in the field and talk to people, invite them down, and the whole process comes. But as a spirit, and we're just about done here, we got to finish up, is you got to bring energy and urgency to recruiting, and energy and urgency to prospecting and inviting. But right here in recruiting, you really got to bring the action, right? You got to bring it. All right, this is A game time. You can be friendly and laid back, you're socializing. You can be that way a little bit too, with a friendly follow-up. But now when it's time to talk, it's time to bring your game and make it happen. And when you're doing this is the magic of our model, right? When you're going higher law, sharing passion and conviction. And I skipped one in there, but as an attitude. They're crazy not to try this. I don't care. I mean, you have any desire to improve your life. Even if you don't know it, you're crazy not to try it because it just is so dang powerful. It's such a good thing to do for people, all the stuff we do. It's so important. This company is so strong. Our brand is so strong. Our business platform is the best that exists in the industry in the world today. Wow. But the magic of our model is we're constantly organically growing, bringing people from outside the industry into it. And that's why you need to be a friendly person, an active prospector, not a prospect. By the way, if you had to do all three at a time, we'd have to call it prospecting, inviting, recruiting. It'd all be one word. We wouldn't need to be one super long word. And supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, I remember that was the longest word. I saw that in the movie Mary Poppins. But here's the deal. It's not prospecting, inviting, recruiting. It's prospecting, and then inviting, and then recruiting. Separate the three, you'll be okay. And you sure will find prospecting a lot more enjoyable if you're not getting the shakes, thinking somehow you got to start inviting and recruiting them at the same time. You're nuts. Don't do that. All right. I've taken enough time. Here's our next webinar. Mentoring and being mentored. I want to talk to you about what you got to do, right, in mentoring people. And I want to talk to you about what you got to do to be being mentored. One of the most critical ingredients in any real success in the business is getting mentored and knowing how to seek and get mentoring. And then you, one day, at some level, right, different levels, you're mentoring different things. You know, you might know how to mentor someone on how to do a prospect list and the attitude about it, and not know how to get them to EBC yet. And so we're all mentors once we have one recruit, you know, and you need to understand more about how to do that well. And you also certainly need to understand how to be mentored and what attitudes you got to have. And there's Yoda, one of the ultimate mentors. And when Luke said, I'll try, he said, no. And I'm not going to do his voice. I'm just not that kind of nerdy guy. Try not. Do or do not. There is no try. One of the great quotes from Mentoring in a Movie. All right. That's it. Next September 11th. Right? A monumental day in our country's history as of 12 years ago. Well, there we are. So September 11th, 2013, next month, 9 a.m. Pacific, we'll talk about mentoring and being mentored. I hope this is of some use to you today. I appreciate all of you being on the call. Let's get back to work. Will you go prospect today? Maybe do a little bit of inviting the people you've already prospected. Why don't you go out 100 names? See how fast you can add 100 names that you get in process from having been friendly over just the next few weeks. And watch how that changes your spirit and attitude of the business. To have all these good people to connect with. It's very rewarding. We change lives. So let's get busy changing them. Let's go make a difference. Thanks, everybody. Love being in business with you. Talk to you soon.